Join us on the last bus home.
So it turns out you have a much better time if you just give it a squeeze.
Nice. Right, I'll bear that in mind.
I've had a word with a driver, right, and he's said that we've had a bit of an uptake in American listeners lately. And I don't know if you know.
What, on purpose?
Hey, mate, I don't know where they've come from, but welcome to our brothers and sisters across the pond.
Nice.
I'm not too sure if you're aware of the physics of the bus and quite how it works, but
I imagine it's like the night bus in Harry Potter.
mate, you're not far wrong. It goes on a bit of like a quantum entanglement system. And if we get viewers in America, that means we can take the bus and we can just nip over whenever we want now. That's how the bus works.
I thought it just kind of drifted around, and then when you press the bell to stop the bus, it just stops where you need it to be.
Don't say that to the Sasquatch, mate. It takes a bit more skill than that. But yeah, I mean, it'd be good if we got a few more international listeners as well, so we can maybe take a trip and check out some spooky spots around the world. But you never know what's going to happen. So today it's going to be a bit of an oddly titled one, but keeping it unique. We're going to go with Haunted Caves, UK versus the USA. So we're going to take the bus around, check a few caves out here, and then pop over the pond. And we're going to get to the end, and I want your kind of view on what you think, who you think won the most haunted cave. If I said to you, if you had to picture a quintessential English ghost and a quintessential American ghost, what would you describe them as?
Well, based on the internet now, I find a lot of British ghosts are still Victorian looking or earlier and classic, whereas US ghosts, as far as I see on the internet, they just happen to always resemble the lady from The Ring or The Grudge.
So you're getting more like an Asian vibe for the
because
American.
That's what's popular and that's what's being faked. When it comes to classic ghosts, though, like I say, for normal hauntings in the USA, we still do have the Civil War guys. But the majority of ours seem to be more old-fashioned. So at the moment, I'm leaning more towards ours being more real.
You've definitely gone with more a classical view. So I don't know if it's the slasher influence, but I'm going to hit it up with, for me, the English ghost is your classic ghost watch, pipes, thing behind the curtain.
Well, you mean the cross-dressing serial killers?
Those kind of things.
Your Buffalo Bills.
We're just a little bit more eccentric. Where I'm going with the American ghost, I'm picturing lumberjack shirt, hideously disfigured in some kind of accident.
Violence-based spirits.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Nailed it.
Okay, well, I'll be interested to hear your things, but I'll give you a verdict at the end.
Great stuff.
I don't intend to upset anyone, but I've got a habit of doing so.
Yeah, we're going to try and not give a biased viewpoint. I mean, we'll just base it purely on the paranormal.
Oh, it will be biased. It'll be my opinion.
Well, there you go, mate. There you go.
If you want a neutral approach, I'll just give you it now and say, show me proof.
Truth until proof. You know how we work.
Exactly. That's twice you've said that. That's becoming a thing.
So what I'm going to do, we're going to take the bus around the UK first, check out a few caves. First one I'm going to get the driver to drop us off at as a bit of a kind of, I wouldn't say paranormal history, but definitely on the macabre vibes. We're going to go into a little bit of the history, a bit of a deep dive on this one, and then we're going to have a look, maybe a whiz past some of the other caves, but we're definitely going to check out a lot of paranormal cavey kind of hotspots. And I have a bit of a fear of caves anyway. I mean, just tight spaces in general, not good places. So if you throw a few ghosts in there, I think you're in for a good time. So the first cave we're going to hit up today is probably the most famous one in the UK as far as stories go and just general lore, is the Hellfire Caves in West Wickham of England. So these caves are kind of a bit unique to a lot of the other caves we're going to check out because these were actually made by the people who made it notorious, the Hellfire Club. These caves were a creation, as I mentioned, of the club, but in particular one guy, a guy called Sir Francis Dashwood, born 1708, so was an old chappie, 11th Baron of Le Despencer, whatever that means. Sounds lame. I'm not too sure.
But I don't know if it's as lame as it sounds because it's a title, mate.
Yeah, but
Titles aren't lame. If you get a title, you're not lame
I guess.
as a baseline. But carry on. Carry on, Lee, no title from Grimsby.
Okay, so yeah, the Hellfire Club was kind of a used name for a lot of other clubs as well, but I'm thinking more less badass clubs all around the 18th century.
Oh, there were definitely some triers.
Yeah. Try
But
hardness.
if you plan to put together a club based on debauchery, you need it somewhere not not readily available to everyone. So a cave will do.
This is it. Surprised more clubs don't do it.
Well, they don't do it now probably because Wi-Fi might be an issue. Just saying. Just saying.
Yep, no, you're right. But it was the Hellfires Club that, like I say, is pretty much the notoriety of these caves. So Sir Francis Dashwood, he was a politician, landowner, and I think from what I can gather, a pretty eccentric kind of character. It wasn't first called the Hellfire Club. It was a really random name, Order of the Friars of St. Francis of Wickham, so it doesn't really have the same ring as Hellfire Club, so I'm kind of glad he went with that one. And in around 1750 to 1752, this is when he built the caves, basically. So he undertook a massive project to excavate a network of chalk and flint caves beneath West Wickham Hill, near where he lived. The official reason, in quote marks, for this excavation was to provide chalk and flint for the new roads between West and High Wickham, as well as creating employment for the local farmers, because I think they had a particularly shit crop that year, so there wasn't exactly flush on the old dollar. That was his kind of ruse for building the caves, but I think really he probably just wanted a sweet-ass clubhouse. He named a lot of the rooms kind of after like his tours of Europe.
Probably couldn't find a big enough tree in Wickham to build
Maybe.
it. Yeah.
Tree would also be a damn cool clubhouse.
When you're
But
6.
anyway, you went with a cave. He'd named rooms like the River Styx and the Inner Temple, so he kind of wanted it as a bit of like an ode to, I suppose, his travels. So the caves became like I say, a clubhouse in the early 1750s up until the early 17. Well, we'll get to the end date, but it ran for a little while. And the club attracted a few famous peeps, lots of politicians, artists. Benjamin Franklin was said to be a close friend of Dashwood who visited the caves. Most notable members included John Montague, never heard of him, 4th Earl of Sandwich, sounds badass, and John Wilkes, kind of think I've heard of him, can't really remember, so not that famous. The club's influence kind of died out in the early 1760s, so it maybe didn't run for that long. Dissolved by 1766, pretty much due to people finding out what kind of stuff they were getting up to.
And I thought it'd be members not paying their subs.
Well, speaking of the stuff they were getting up to, it was pretty sus. Lots of
local maids going missing, I'm guessing.
Yeah, they probably had its fair share of that. Rumours of black masses, Satan worship, all that kind of stuff. Most historical accounts suggest like the activities were, let's say a few of these words, which I'm not quite sure what they even mean. So, libertine indulgence doesn't sound great, does it? But that's what it was there.
Well, that's I could be wrong, but what did you say? Libertine indulgence.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's essentially poets sitting around drinking absinthe.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
in a nutshell, libertines
That's
are
not so bad.
your your poet types. I mean, nowadays I don't think they're poet types. Nowadays, I think we just call them like smackheads. But back
Fair
then,
play.
it were your poets and your layabouts who preferred to get into a mind state before they did any work.
Okay. All right. Fair play. Fair play. So, kind of goes with the rest of it. Anti-establishment satire, mockery of traditional religious practices. So basically, what you're saying: a bunch of poets laying around, getting caned, talking about smashing the system and mocking religion.
Yeah. A person, especially a man, who freely indulges in sensual pleasures without regard to moral principles.
Yeah,
So
kind of sounds like the motto.
that's a libertine for you. So
Well,
sensual libertines or whatever. I mean, I think let's text it a little bit further.
there you go. Well, no mention of that, but
We'll say consent was assumed.
yeah, let's go with that for now. The research didn't bring up
Tacit consent was given.
exactly olden day medieval consent. So, as I mentioned, a lot of mock religious ceremonies and basically ceremonies in general seem to have a lot of the satanic vibes, where a lot of it was about the theatre. Core activity was parody of religious rituals. They sound like an improv comedy troupe to me, but hey ho. The mocks of the Roman Catholic Church, which Dashwood openly had a dislike for. Members would reportedly dress in like mock robes. They conducted mock sacrifices to pagan deities like Bacchus, the god of wine, and Venus, the god of love, embodying a rigorously pagan practice as described by contemporary Horace Walpole. As well as this, hedonism, debauchery, as the two go side by side, lavish feasts, excessive drinking, and sexual promiscuity were central to their gatherings. Prostitutes, sometimes dressed as nuns, were often present. These guys were just all about the
So we could have saved you a minute and a half there by just saying orgies,
orgies, or
drug fueled orgies. Yeah.
this is it, straight up Diddy Pie. They were the first to do it.
Oh, they all wear white.
This is it. So yeah, so as I mentioned, a lot of similarities to Satanism there with the theatrics, all that sort of stuff. I will move on from that because we don't want to delve too much into the history of them. But if people are interested in the Hellfire Club, there is a lot of stuff out there on them. They seem kind of badass.
I do know there were more modern Hellfire clubs, like 70s and stuff, because I know Alice Cooper and John Lennon and stuff were got involved.
This is it, and this is why these guys were classed as the Hellfire Club, because these were the OGs. These were the boys.
In fact, Alice Cooper was probably there in the 1700s as well, to be honest.
There you go. It kind of looks like it. So the paranormal element of these caves, we're going to go through. There's a few ghosts who seem to inhabit the place. So we'll take a look at these. Suki, which seemed to be the most famous ghost of the cave, a young, beautiful barmaid from the local George and Dragon pub. So the legend says she was tricked into meeting the lords of the caves, only to find 3 local boys whose affection she had spurned. So she basically told these boys to jog on. They got butt hurt, lured into the cave, pretending to be the lords.
Well, I understand that virile young men do not like to be friend zoned.
Tell me about it. Check this. They humiliated her. They threw stones and hit poor Suki. She was left there to die. So, pretty bad. A spirit is frequently seen roaming around. Kind of sad, but it's a ghost story. What can you do? Next one we've got is Paul Whitehead. Just sounds like your average dude, doesn't he? Paul Whitehead from down the road. He was a steward of the Hellfire Club and a close friend of Sir Francis Dashwood. Legend has it that his heart was kept in an urn at the nearby mausoleum, but was supposedly stolen by an American soldier. So his ghost is sent to haunt the caves and the hill above, endlessly searching for his missing heart.
What's an American soldier doing in 1700s England?
Bro, can't ask those kind of questions. I mean,
I'm not saying they never visited, but it just seems oddly specific.
a lot of crazy shit went down in the 1700s. You'd be surprised.
Very.
Well, that brings me on to the next guy, which you're also going to ask that question about. Benjamin Franklin was a regular visitor to the caves.
You see, that kind of explains it. He probably had a bit of a bit of backup.
This is it, but this is what I'm
fair enough.
saying. I mean, these caves were famous across the pond to our American folk, and they wanted to see what all the debauch shenanigans were like. So they came over and checked it out. So yeah, so that was the Hellfire Caves. I kind of like that one because, while we've still got the paranormal stuff, we've also just got the stuff definitely went down. I think it's pretty cool. I'm saying that maybe a lot of bad shit went on there as well, but all adds to the lore. So our next cave is a cave in Kent, which for any listeners who are not sure where Kent is, it's in the posh part of England. That's all I can tell you. Can't give an exact direction. It's just posh. It's a place called Chislehurst Caves. Kind of well known as well, but we'll delve into it. It's got a few spirits, the famous White Lady, as most places do.
It's about
Chislehurst Caves are an extensive 20-mile network of man-made tunnels and chambers in Kent, England. So while some believe they date back to the Roman or even earlier times, it was actually the written records indicate they were mining for chalk and flint as early as 1250, so it goes back. There's some history there. So over the centuries has served as various purposes, which I think brings in the paranormal element, catches that energy. A tourist attraction, a concert venue, an air raid shelter during World War II, an ammunition depot, and even mushroom storage. Not sure if it's magic, but either way, it's been used for a lot of stuff, thus collecting the energy, thus breaking over to the spirit realm and letting all the entities roam free. And speaking of the entities, we've got a couple of examples. The famous White Lady. No, it's not the White Lady you know from pretty much every other ghost story. This is the White Lady specific to these caves. Prominent ghostly figure. I mean, nothing out of the ordinary here. She floats around. A spirit's linked to a tragic death by her husband within the caves. Bones were actually reportedly found there in the 1940s. Might have been hers, might not, but something bad definitely happened down there. The spirit is described as malevolent, so kind of thinking not the best. Another one of the spirits seen in the cave is a child. So a bit of the cave partially collapsed in 1939, and it was actually said to have crushed quite a lot of kids and people around there. So I'm not too sure what they were doing in the cave, but apparently it took out a few people.
they weren't doing anything helpful if they made it collapse.
Well, this is it. Maybe they're just kicking the walls. Who knows what they're doing? People were bored back in the day. You didn't have shit to do. You didn't have gadgets. So you just went to a cave and kicked the walls.
Didn't have e-scooters to run around on.
Exactly. Or spice to get caned on. You just kicked a cave. So visitors to the cave have commented that they've heard giggles and kind of like more child paranormal sounds, whatever that is. It's going to be usual. Kids running. They're always giggling. Why are kid ghosts always giggling? It's not like they're happy. So,
Well, I don't know. I think they're gleeful about being invisible, I'm guessing.
maybe.
It'd be fun.
Maybe. It's all possible, my friend. Spirit realm's a wacky place. So lots of reports of poltergeist activity in this place, as usual. I'm not going to bore you with stories of things flying off shelves.
Oh, please do not bore us with stories of paranormal activity on this podcast, whatever you do. Just skip over it. Just stick to facts.
Well, okay. Being as you asked. Locks being thrown across the room, cables torn from sockets.
Locks. What? Padlocks.
Just says locks. So I'm guessing maybe this cave's got locks. Not sure what.
Well, I'd
what you'd
hope
be
it'd be
locking.
padlocks because other locks would be attached or embedded in doors, wouldn't they? So,
This is it. You never
yeah.
know. We'll have to go, mate, and check it out. See these locks for ourselves.
See why you wanted to skip over it now.
But yeah, Chisellhurst Caves. Again, bit of history there if you want to delve into any of these ones a little bit more in depth. But we have a lot to get through, and the bus drivers told me it's not exactly flush on petrol at the minute. So we've got to keep it up.
The last bus home's powered on kitten farts and good feelings.
You would think, but
Oh, fair
you
enough.
know what he's like. I think he's a skinflint, and he wanted a bit of petty, but never know. So yeah, we're going to take the bus over to Buxton in Derbyshire for Pools Cavern. So Pools Cavern, it's a natural limestone cave system formed over millions of years ago. So this one goes way back, and it's got a rich history of human activity, again, trapping all that energy. Evidence of Romano-British use for religious practices and metalworking. Its name actually comes from a legendary 15th century outlaw named Poole, who supposedly used the caves as a hideout. Mary Queen of Scots also reportedly has visited the cavern. It opened as a legitimate tourist attraction in 1853, so definitely an old one. As opposed to more of the actual specific ghosts, this is kind of just, there's a lot of shit happening. Sightings of tall, dark shadows moving around, so they're not really like naming these, it's just there's a lot of stuff going on. Accounts of disembodied voices, sometimes described as screams, echoing from deep down into the caves as if something's trapped down there. A lot of people have experienced sudden drops in temperature. I know I wouldn't go there, but it's relevant to this cave. Feelings of being watched and an overall just eerie atmosphere, especially in deeper sections of the cave, which you're going to say, look, if you're deep down in a cave, you're not exactly going to be feeling tip-top. But we're going to go with the paranormal explanation on this one because that makes more sense. Let's move on from that one because we're going to take the bus over to the Lake District in Langdale Valley. If anybody is listening, doesn't know where the Lake District is, I say it's in the very scenic part of the UK.
Northwest.
That's all I know. Northwest, whatever. Weird directions, nerd. So we're going to check out the Cathedral Caves. So these are dramatic. They look really cool. It's like disused slate mines. So when I was looking at the pictures of these, it was, it looks cool. Big cavernous like underground space with all these like rigid where like the slate is. Just looks kind of like dark and almost not of this earth. So dating back to the 16th century, they were actively mined for the slate. Tough and often dangerous working conditions. So I think when I was looking through, a lot of people perished.
You would call cathedral caves just based on their size.
Well, this is it, yeah. And I think like the cavernous element. So
Yeah, huge.
well, I mean, yeah, the pictures that I was looking at seemed like just huge spaces, but just the way the slate forms, it just looks dark, it looks cool. Unfortunately, stories of child labour in the 19th century, but it was everywhere. It's what they did back in the day. But yeah, I'm guessing a lot of those kids perished down the mines, which wasn't nice, but maybe comes to some good ghost stories later on down the line. The main chamber, Cathedral Cavern, is impressive at 40 feet high. So yeah, as you said, very large. As I mentioned, unfortunately, lots of kids did work down the mine back in the day. So paranormal investigators have visited this place and similar to the last place have heard disembodied children's voices within the caves.
Was there giggling?
Well, these are sometimes picked up on audio recordings or just heard by the people themselves. Didn't really go into what they were, but yeah, I'm going to go with a cheeky giggle, maybe a scream.
Well, I ask because, you said children working in the mines with a bit of an attitude there. Like, you might disagree with it. But if they're giggling, then I'm assuming they enjoyed it.
I see where you're coming from. So as well as the kids, some sinister male voices were heard. The classic, "Just get out,"
Ow.
suggesting a malevolent entity. This was also captured on a voice recording, which I'm sure you can find out there by various paranormal investigators. Well, obviously this one was just by one crew, but I might look into that. Probably a YouTube video showing them doing the usual things paranormal investigators do. Derek Okoro style. Accounts exist of small stones being thrown at visitors, so naughty little ghosts don't maybe really like the visitors come in, so they have a little fun and throw some stones at them. Maybe that's what they're giggling at. Cheeky little shits. A lot of shadow people, as you would expect, roaming around a cave.
Yeah.
Well, reports particularly of children. So when I say shadowy figures, I'm really kind of going with this cave is just haunted by children that tragically perished while they were working and trying to earn a buck, but probably not getting a buck. Not the best, but their ghosts apparently now haunt the cathedral caves in Langdale Valley. Moving on to Royston in Hertfordshire.
Hertfordshire. Yeah,
Yes,
it's somewhere south of Scotland, but quite north of the south coast.
Okay. So yeah, we're going to take a trip to Royston Cave, which is there.
It'll be east of Wales, north of the south coast, and just somewhat south of Scotland.
Sweet. Somewhere in the UK. So Royston Cave is a curious man-made bell-shaped cave discovered accidentally in 1742 beneath a busy crossroad. This place seemed to be a bit of a, again, historical free-for-all. The walls are covered in extensive and intricate carvings, predominantly Christian, in a medieval in style, so depicting saints, biblical scenes and symbols. So theory about its use goes from Knights Templar meeting place, Freemasons lodge, hermit's retreat, pretty sweet hermit's retreat, or even a private chapel. So again, a lot of activity, and that's led to a few paranormal stories. As I explained, there was some carvings. So the very existence of this cave and the explained carvings contribute to its pretty eerie atmosphere. So again, not massively paranormal in the sense of like ghosts, but the mystery of those carvings probably lead to a bit of its lore and notoriety. It's got a ley line connection, which you know I'm all about. Brings a little bit of science in there. You wouldn't understand about that. Me and your son would get it, but you know I'm the science guy. You leave that shit to me. You just sit there and look pretty.
I'll be the eye candy, and I'll leave the science to you, Lee.
So the ley line connection. Esoterically inclined individuals claim the cave lies at the intersection of two ley lines, including the famous St. Michael's line, which some believe connects sites of spiritual power and could contribute to unusual energies within the cave.
So, is it this crossing of the ley lines? Is this the crossroads that you said it's underneath, or is it underneath an actual crossroads as well?
No, I think it's underneath an actual crossroads. The ley lines is also just a connection.
Okay. Because
So,
sometimes I think it might have been criminals or other ne'er-do-wells would be buried at a crossroads. So their ghosts couldn't their ghosts couldn't roam because they wouldn't know what path to take. But seriously, it's a thing, and I don't know if maybe that would have something to do. Maybe several ne'er-do-wells would be buried at these crossroads.
how simple.
And if they couldn't find a road to go down or couldn't pick a road, maybe they go, oh, but there's a cave downstairs.
Maybe it leads to all the haunted stories that go on.
Maybe they tried to cheat the system and ended up in a cave, yeah.
You never know, mate. You never know. So I think this one, again, with its history, there's a lot of, not necessarily specific ghosts in this one. It's more reports of, your usual stuff. I think probably the Knights Templar brought the spirits into here with their kind of ceremonies. Again, lots of reports of like shadowy figures, those type of things. So it definitely seems to be the shadow people are crossing over a lot into these caves. Not so much physical entities that are going to cover you in ectoplasm. Let's move on. We're going to hit up the last few caves of England before we take the bus international. So the next cave we're going to check out is in Somerset. Now, my geography precedes me right. I know that's probably down south.
The West Country, Southwest.
Southwest, yeah. Yep.
In fact, one of the greatest. In fact, Somerset has Wookey Hollow.
You must have spoken to the Sasquatch, mate, because we've just arrived at Wookey Hole.
Oh, fair enough.
So, Wookey Hole, mate, is located in the Mendip Hills and has been inhabited for thousands of years. So, again, a pretty rich history. It's famous for its connection to the legend of the Witch of Wookey Hole, a pagan woman supposedly turned to stone by a medieval monk from Glastonbury.
And for anyone listening from, well, anywhere, this name Wookey Hole does predate quite substantially Star Wars.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So we're not talking about Chewbacca's hole. This is Wookey Hole.
Wookey Hole.
Although I'm assuming Chewbacca has holes, but we're not talking about that. That's a different podcast entirely.
Well, this Wookey Hole is full of ghosts.
36 or something, Rule 34. Continue.
True, mate, true. So the caves have been a pretty popular tourist attraction since the 19th century. So again, lots of activity in these bad boys. Main story, as I mentioned, the Witch of Wookey Hole. Ghostly inhabitant that you can pretty much describe as a witch. The original legend is about her being turned into stone, a stalagmite formation resembling like a cloaked figure. Visitors and staff have reported hearing her cackling, feeling a cold breeze, ominous presence, particularly near the witch's kitchen and the stalagmite itself. So I think it's one of those things where something kind of resembles something, but if you ask me...
Cackling, because that's the only way a witch can laugh.
This is it.
I'm guessing.
This is it, mate. Yeah, you never go full witch.
Never go full witch.
Never go full witch. So yeah, child spirits again seems to be a pretty common occurrence of the UK caves. Not sure about the American ones, but we'll check that out. Maybe we were just really big on child labour. I'm not too sure. But a lot of reports of childlike apparitions. Again, mate, with a giggling. People have reported these kids just running around.
Kids like caves.
This is it, mate. Maybe it's not so bad. Maybe it's just like a big playground, like a big construction site that they'd have to break into. With this one, quite a few monks have been seen walking around, ghost monks, I mean, just chilling. Again, figures just resembling monks. So again, these are more shadowy figures. Just seems to be prevalent in caves, doesn't it? Shadow figures and...
Again, I'm going to put that down to a lack of light rather than shadow people.
You would, because you're a hardened skeptic. Personally, mate,
I just think shadow people need more respect. Not that they just turn up willy-nilly anywhere. And they're too classy to appear in caves.
Okay, mate. We are hitting up the last cave. So the last place we've arrived at is in our home county of North Yorkshire. Paisley Bridge. Stump Cross Caverns. You heard of them?
Yeah.
You been?
Yeah.
Nice.
I thought you were going to go to Mother Shipton's cave in Knaresborough there, but I don't... That's a body of its own, but I don't think there's any ghosts there.
No.
So that doesn't help in a Haunted Caves episode.
This is it, mate. Well, Stump Cross Caverns, discovered in the 1860s by lead miners, natural limestone, so no man-made kind of doodads in this one.
Limestone's a big factor.
Yeah, I've noticed that popping up a lot, but not iron, which might just be an American thing. That'd be interesting.
I think it more so than iron, limestone gets blamed.
Do you reckon?
Hmm.
We really need someone with some smarts to look into this. Which minerals?
Or maybe someone with Google, like you or me.
Maybe, mate, but I want a proper scientific investigation. Which mineral attracts the most ghosts? I want a proper scientific look into that. We need to get that funded. So yeah, Stump Cross Caverns. I'm going to pop straight into the ghosts, but these seem to be mainly miners. This one didn't really give a link to kids. I think this is just the workers of the time. this was where most of the reports seem to be. So visitors and staff have claimed to see, again, shadowy figures, hearing the sounds of picks and shovels. So it's like the spirits thinking maybe a little rift in the dimension there, going back in time and showing us, what life was like, but these spirits are somehow trapped. These caves are a confusing place to kind of get your head around. I'm not quite sure how they worked, but seems to be holding the spirits of all the people who kind of perished. And similar to pretty much all the other caves, reports of disembodied voices, whispers, fake conversations, no giggling in this one. So Pateley Bridge, North Yorkshire, I think we did it right. I don't think we had.
Well, there's no giggling there because it's grim up north.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of the English caves. So I think the Sasquatch is ready. We're all fueled up. So let's take this heap over the pond. Looks like we have landed in Kentucky. And I think we've got a couple of caves to visit here, according to the Sasquatch. Now, I know you know this story because we're going to be arriving in the next few seconds. Yep, I've seen the sign, Hopkinsville.
Okay, yep.
I'm sure you heard of this story.
The goblins.
So, the goblins, mate, yeah. Pretty much the goblins are the star of this show. And this isn't one cave in particular. It seems to be a few caves, a few different events, but all featured in Hopkinsville. So these goblins, small humanoid creatures, described as goblin-like by witnesses. These events took place in 1955. They happened like a close proximity to the cave where the goblins were seen. So that's what kind of links the goblins to the cave, because it's probably where they live, right? If you're a goblin, you're going to live in a cave. It's just kind of standard.
If looking at the drawings of the Hopkinsville goblins that were produced from the people who saw them, they did have quite big bat-like ears, which would be useful for echolocation in places like caves, like bats do.
Hey, when you're right, you're right. That makes a lot of sense. I'm thinking, I was initially going down almost a non-human intelligence, maybe more of an alien route, but now I'm thinking this is just like a forgotten creature. Something from the olden times that just went underground, said, screw these humans, they're all batshit. Let's go underground and live a goblin life.
And get bat ears.
Exactly. A little bit of the history and background of the event I'm going to go into. So the incident occurred on the night of August 21st, 1955 at an isolated farm of the Sutton family near Kelly and Hopkinsville. A large group and several neighbours were present when the series of terrifying encounters began. While not directly in a cave, like I say, it was just in the rural area, the place is kind of like riddled with like sinkholes. It seems to be a pretty kind of like rugged terrain, caves as well. And the idea basically that these creatures emerged from the cave. The incident began when a visitor, Billy Ray Taylor, went to get water from a well and saw a strange glowing object. He followed a small 3.5 foot tall humanoid creature with large eyes and, as you mentioned, big ears, long arms extended in claws, so your classic goblin style. It was described as having a metallic and silvery appearance, which is quite odd for a goblin.
Well, also from this, I don't know, you're probably going to end up covering it, but there was a bit of an altercation with them, and it all kicked off, and there was some shotguns fired, and there was been reports of metallic ricochets when they were hit by the buckshot. Like when they were hit with the pellets, they tinged off like they were wearing some kind of armor.
So the farm was subject to a terrifying siege by what the witnesses described as a dozen of these small goblin-like creatures. So they peered into the windows, climbed on the roofs, did all the things you would expect a goblin to do who were performing a siege. Terrifying stuff.
The activities of a little shit.
Yeah, this is it. So they shot at the goblins with rifles, but without effect. The creatures were reportedly very agile, floating and gliding, and able to reappear quickly after being shot. So, yeah, interesting. Not too sure what these kind of dudes are, but they seem to have some kind of mad skills. The creatures were described as curious, but also menacing. They would poke their heads into windows and sometimes make a sound that was kind of described as like chittering. thinking almost like kind of
Gremlins.
sparrow bird. Yeah, when they kind of do that noise. Yeah, pretty much gremlin speak. So when shot, they would merely flip backwards, which would be pretty badass to see, but totally unharmed. There was a police investigation. Local and state police investigated, finding ample evidence of a shootout, bullet holes, all the casings, stuff like that, but no definitive signs of the creatures themselves. So the family's distress was clearly genuine. I think the police kind of put down in their investigation. And they've actually maintained their story consistently. So I buy it. The cave connection speculation. So while officially labelled an unidentified flying object encounter, close proximity to Kentucky's extensive cave systems led to theories that these goblins might be an unknown subterranean humanoid species that had evolved underground. So this particular theory gained traction in a cryptozoological circle. An official poster for Mammoth Cave National Park even depicts a Kentucky goblin. Pretty cool for its folklore. So what we're going to do while we're in Kentucky, we're going to stay in Kentucky and we're going to pop over to the Mammoth Cave National Park, which is slightly different. No goblins in this part, but I think goblins were involved also. I think just all over the caves of Kentucky. Probably it's a goblin hotspot. So if you have any listeners out there from Kentucky, if you do have any pictures of any goblins,
So are we classing the presence of a goblin as haunting?
I think we could be general and go down that route. More of like a general annoyance. Do you know what I mean? If a goblin's staring through my window, I'm not calling the Ghostbusters. I'm going to get like a rolling pin or something to whack it on its head. Just get it off. Do you know what I mean? Kind of, yeah, just an inconvenience, let's call it. So in the Mammoth National Cave Park, we're going more Native American, spirits of enslaved guides, a little thing about tuberculosis in there. The Mammoth Cave is the world's longest known cave system, so this one's a big boy. Hundreds of miles of unexplored passages. 19th century saltpeter mining. Not too sure what saltpeter is.
Saltpeter is a component of gunpowder, yeah.
Yeah. A tragic period in the 1940s when it was used as an experimental tuberculosis hospital due to its consistent temperature leading to patients' death within the caves. So there was definitely some dark shit that happened here. I will just jump into that. The tuberculosis patients, so the consumptive colony, as they were called, experiment led to the deaths of several patients inside the cave. Visitors near Corpse Rock, as it's fondly known, where bodies were placed before removal, reported hearing phantom coughing and wheezing and moans, which are said to be the spirits of the tuberculosis patients. As I mentioned earlier, spirits of enslaved guides. Many of the early and most famous guides of Mammoth Caves were enslaved African Americans, most notably Stephen Bishop, who explored and mapped vast sections of the caves. These reports of their lingering spirits. Park rangers and visitors have described seeing, again, shadowy figures, but these were kind of maybe a little bit more coherent. They were seen to be dressed in like old-fashioned clothing, so you could see a bit more of these. Definitely giving kind of a general vibe of the era that they were from, and they were old school. The Native American spirits. So given the pretty extensive history of the human habitation around there, some legends speak of the spirits of ancient Native Americans who lived and died around that area. They still roam and haunt, according to some witnesses. This guy, Old Lewis, kind of a cool one. I'm picturing just an old dude with weathered skin and a white beard, little hat. Well-known early ghost story involves an apparition seen by an old guy named Lewis, who is believed to be haunted by a specific ghost until his remains were properly disposed of, should we say. Another one, just named Melissa. So not too much about her, but Melissa was a jilted lover who supposedly led her tutor deep into the cave and abandoned him to die. Again, along with these specific stories, all your usual, a lot of unexplained occurrences, your usual disembodied voices. Park rangers actually conducted a demonstration which was called Blackout. And what it involved is turning off the lights to simulate early tours. When they were doing this, they'd been shoved by unseen forces. So as soon as those lights go out, those spirits come in and start causing a havoc.
All right. As long as it's not the other people in the group bumping into each other when it gets dark.
This is it.
That'd just be silly, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Either or. We're going to move out of Kentucky now, and we're going to head to pretty much, I would say, along with that one of the most famous caves, the Bell Witch Cave, Adams, Tennessee. Won't go too much into this one as it's very, could be a bus on its own, and
It absolutely is, yeah.
it's been touched on. So I'll whiz past this one. As we know, Bell Witch, legend of one of America's most famous, well-documented cases of hauntings. A lot of the same sort of stuff with this. Disembodied voices and whispers, cold spots, your usual unexplained phenomenon, feelings of being watched, general unease, feelings of an ominous presence. There's a curse of talking rocks. But again, I don't want to delve too much into this one because I really do think it's one that we can kind of just spend a little bit of time there. I'll see if the bus can bring us back to this. So, little whistle-stop tour past the Bell Witch Cave. Next on our journey, we're going all the way over to California. Now, I hope I get this right. Vallecito, the Moaning Cavern. So the Moaning Cavern is a massive vertical cave known for its colossal main chamber. Its name comes from the distinctive moaning or humming sounds that early miners and explorers heard deep from its depths. While now attributed to air currents and water dripping, yeah, sure. Local legends give it a more sinister origin, which I'm buying. More logical. The cavern also holds significant archaeological importance, with some of the oldest human remains in North America found within, dating back to 12,000 and 13,000 years. So this bad boy's got some history. We're going to have to give America to that one. Check out some paranormal events. Again, Native American spirits with this one, and something called the Rock Monster, which sounds pretty badass. So the prevailing legend among the Miwok Native Americans was that moaning sounds were caused by a rock monster named Yayali, who lured people to their deaths. So while not a ghost, this folklore instilled fear and suggests a long-held perception of the cavern that it's a dangerous place, but possibly a sentient place. So, it kind of thinks for itself. Again, with all the other ones, lots of stories of disembodied moans, whispers. Seem to be getting a theme of feelings of unease as well. All kinds of things which your hardened skeptic is going to kind of cast off as just being in a cave. But nah, I'm thinking there's definitely, I think with all those minerals around, it's breaking the rift to the spirit realm, and we're just seeing all kinds of shit. So we're going to leave California and head over to Arizona, to the Colossal Cave Mountain Park. Sounds kind of cool. So this large dry cave system has a history spanning over thousands of years. So again, lots of energy collection there. So the early indigenous use by, and again, I hope I don't murder this name, Hohokam Subipori and the Apache tribes for ceremonies, shelters, and rituals. Later in the 19th and early 20th centuries, it gained notoriety as a hideout for outlaws and train robbers. So some cool history for this one. We've even got some stories of ghost robbers, which is kind of cool.
This is something I hear a bit. There's certain caves were a popular hiding place for this criminal, that criminal, pirates. You hear it all over the place. Are these just locations only known to the criminals to be hiding out, and not information that would find its way to law people in any way? Like only the criminals knew where these things were. Oh, there's a hideout we all know about, just don't tell the police.
I'd like to think they had an app which just told them the nearest cave for hiding out, but maybe not back in the day. They just knew, dude. It was word of mouth. No apps, no iPhones, just word of mouth.
And well, this is it, and they just hope nobody told the posses or anything. Yeah, fair enough.
Exactly. Snitches get stitches. So yeah, so lots of reports of ghost robbers. Train robbers as well, supposedly hid their loot and were killed in the cave. So they're still looking around, trying to get revenge or find the loot. So a lot of people believe that the ghosts are spirits of the bandits searching for the lost treasure or guarding it even in death. So we've got a guy here called Frank Schmidt. The ghost of Frank Schmidt, one of the earliest developers and guides of the caves, is also reportedly encountered. He's often described as a friendly presence, which is a stark contrast to the more menacing robber spirits. So yeah, our first friendly ghost. We have another Native American spirit. This is of a woman who is said to moan and sob within the caves, leading to feelings of sadness or distress, which is a sad spirit that's in there. And like England, we have a lady in white. Wonder if we pitched her up with our lady in white? I can't actually remember, but we have them. So
Is it a lady
American,
in white or a white lady?
white, yeah, this is it. So
I mean, there's a difference. A white lady would appear as a all white image, whereas a lady in white could be whatever color with white clothes on.
you're not wrong. But again, America has it. A ghostly woman in a white dress has been seen floating near the cave's entrance, sometimes described as a guardian spirit, so again, not too malevolent.
A door woman.
Yeah, man. We are coming up to the end of our American trip, just a couple more caves to head now. So we're heading over to Stanton in Missouri for the Merrimack Caverns. So the Merrimack Caverns, again, is a natural cave system famous for its connection to the notorious outlaw Jesse James. It's heavily promoted as his hideout, so I think they claim to hang on to that fame. The cave was also site of saltpeter mining during the Civil War.
Potassium nitrate, that's what it's called. That's what it's also known as. That's just popped in my head.
That'll be it. So a fair amount of history. Jesse James and his gang, the most prevalent ghost stories revolve around Jesse James and the members of his gang. Visitors and staff have reported seeing shadowy figures of the men, but it is them, in 19th century clothing, hearing disembodied footsteps or even sounds of horses echoing in certain chambers, leading to speculation that the outlaw's spirits linger. I bet they do. Civil War soldiers in this one, given its use for saltpeter mining, as we discussed, which was used for gunpowder. There's also anecdotal accounts of encounters with the spirits of Confederate soldiers who may have worked or died within the cave. As well as all the others, your usual reports of unexplained voices, feelings of unease, you name it, tick it off your cave haunted bingo card. Kids laughing, general eerie feelings, bada bing, bada boom. That's a cave.
Why would kids be in there? Was it the kids saltpeter mining? Yeah, I suppose little delicate hands to pick that stuff up.
Ghosts do weird shit. I ain't going to try and explain their behaviour. So, coming out of the cave now, we are hitting up our last stop on the American cave tour, and we're heading over to West Liberty in Ohio. Ohio! The Ohio Caverns. So, Ohio Caverns are natural limestone caves. Dude, limestone.
Telling you.
It's like the English iron. Calling it in. You got that one. So these caves were discovered in 1987. They are known for their impressive formations, including the Crystal King, one of the largest and most perfectly formed stalactites in the world. As relatively young show caves, their history of human interaction is less ancient than some, but still holds its share of pretty strange tales, in which we'll get into. But this one was more, I don't want to sound like a broken record. A lot of these cave stories are pretty much all about the shadow people, unexplained whispers, footsteps, giggling, disembodied voices. Okay? Now, I'm not playing any of it down because it just seems to be standard. across the USA caves, across the UK caves. We don't really see a lot of uniqueness within the spirit realm and what they're trying to get up to. It's a lot of the same shit, which I'm just thinking is a location. Caves have their ghosts, churches have their ghosts, graveyards have their ghosts.
Well, you saying there's like different races or species of ghosts?
Exactly. It's all based on the locale. And as we've discovered, limestone is American answers to iron. The mineral, that's just...
I don't know. I think iron and limestone would act the same way in either continent.
I'm going to take limestone and iron supplements and see if anything paranormal happens to me.
You'll die, and
Do you
then
think?
you'll be a ghost. Yeah, that if you want to take iron and you want to take limestone, mate. Yeah,
Shit,
off
man.
you go.
I just thought I could buy the supplements off Amazon, but
No, and then you could become a bus home of your own.
that'd get the viewers in. That'd get them subscribing, wouldn't it? The ghost on the episode. The driver is just about to take us back to England and drop us off home. What would you say was your favourite haunted cave?
Okay, so I'm a fan of the cathedral caverns in England, and in the
Yep.
US, I just don't think you've even begun to scratch the surface of what's probably available cave-wise in America.
Definitely. Yeah, they own us, I think, on sheer number of caves. So apologies to our American viewers. I mean, like I said, the bus wasn't too flush on petrol. We just had to do a quick tour. But if you do know of any caves that we have missed, we'd be really interested to know about them. So hit us up, pop something in the comments and we can check it out, have a look into it. And you never know, it might become an episode.
Right. So for me, my preference would be, and despite what I said at the start, I think I'm going to go with the American ones, purely because now I didn't think I were going to go this way for the reason I'm about to give, but when there's ghosts and they're named, like this is the ghost of this person, this happened, they got jilted by whoever, or they were found stealing this and they got buried here, that's their ghost. I tend to not believe them because people are pinning a lot on the specific person where there's only, like nowadays, you see the ghost, there's nobody alive to verify that it's that person. So like the Jesse James, like you've just said, okay, we've got some shadowy figures, and that's Jesse James and his boys, because it's a cave where he might have been once. Now, watching things like ghost hunters, taps and what have you, they go around America, they do the ghost things, and they'll go to an old inn, like an old 1700s inn, and they'll say, oh, well, such and such, like Roosevelt stayed here one night, or he used to stay here one night every year on his way to wherever. That's his ghost that we see at the top of the stairs. And they're like, it's an inn. It's had so many customers, but it's the most famous person's ghost because he's got nowhere better to haunt. And I find the English ones, we've got more people being named. Whereas when you skip over and you say your standard shadow people or your standard noises, they're the ones I'm more inclined to believe. When people start attributing a name and a background story to them, I'm like, whatever. No. Because people seem, like say with the inn, that's just a generic story. I'm not referring to anything specific there. But there's a lot of places where there's, George Washington's like passed through here and stayed the night. So on the evening of July 8th, when it's raining, you see the ghost of George Washington, or do you? Or do you just see the ghost of a person?
I get
You
you.
know? And
Yeah.
there's less of that in the American caves. I think the bits that you're skipping over, where you're talking about your standard ghosts, I think they're the draw for me. They're the ones I would feel more inclined to believe than famous ghosts, to be honest. White
Oh, that's fair play.
ladies, they work as generic, unless they've got a backstory. But when you're saying, oh, such and such lured a lover down here, and, fine, that might have happened, but is it their ghost, or do you just have to have a story for it?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think they're more about the law and just general people trying to, maybe the situations did happen, but it's always good if you
Yeah.
can.
Or they're just saying, don't go in that cave because bad people tend to hide in caves.
Yeah, this is true.
So daughter of mine, don't go in that cave at night because there's a ghost. Not that you're going to get abused 7 ways from Sunday if you go in
Yeah.
that cave at night.
No, I actually agree with you on that one. I know I brushed over it, but I'm all about the shadowy figures and anything a little bit more subtle.
Anything, the less information is more credible, and this is why certain horror films are not scary, because you're given a whole backstory of, oh, this guy was killed by this group of people and he comes back every year. That's not, Freddy, Nightmare on Elm Street. No, I prefer something like the first Paranormal Activity film where there was no backstory. It
Yeah,
was just started happening, and I prefer that. I like the horror film where you don't see the bad guy.
yeah,
You don't see the monster or the entity, and where there's no rhyme or reason given for it. But when it gets all tied up because this group of teenagers decided to get a book out of the library which nobody thought of in that town for the last 50 years.
yeah. Agreed.
And
They're
it
the best
makes it
ones.
less scary. I prefer ones where there's no explanation, there's no reason for it. That's what I
It
like.
it leaves it up to your imagination. Your imagination is always going to come up with the most scariest thing to you.
That's
So
why
just
books are scarier than films, because you're the one painting the picture. You're not
yeah,
looking at
yeah.
someone else's version of that story.
True blue.
And that's the same with ghost stories for me. Is the less information, the more I can build up in my head. And obviously, because I know it's a scary story, I'm going to put things in there that scare me,
Yeah, yeah.
and it makes it
So
scary for me.
and on that basis, then you are sticking with the USA for
Yes,
scariest
because
cave winner.
just on what we've covered, I think if we were to go into more American hauntings in general places, then we'll probably find a lot more named people because they stayed there once.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of that in England. But as far as the cave ones goes, there's more generic ones in America so far.
Cool. Fair play. Well, they definitely win on numbers, and like you say, the shadow people are rife there. So, looks like you got Scott's vote, but I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with England.
Why don't you go with finishing your sentence?
I'm gonna go with England. I had to have a think about that one because America does have a lot of cool caves, but there's something for me that tickles my fancy with the Hellfire Cave because it's kind of a bit more of a believable history, and I just dig
I think
all
the
that.
parties are more of a pull there than
Exactly. I just dig all the debauch and just kind of like theatrical kind of stuff that went on. I just bet it was a party. And again, they probably got up to some bad shit. I'm not saying they were nice dudes, but it definitely holds a bit of mysticism with probably some of the practices they were doing.
It sounds fun, but if you think about, like, what's that film, The Riot Club, where it's just basically overprivileged people treating poor people
yeah.
like a game.
That's exactly what it'd be, yeah, 100%. But if we're going down the paranormal route, I like the kind of ghost stories that were involved with it. And again, for me, a lot of creepy shit rituals went on there, so that's going to pull in that dark energy. So I'm going with the UK on that. So as there are only two of us, Mr. Wilson, that's a draw. But yeah, so that brings us to the end of the cave episode, Scott. I hope you enjoyed that one. I hope you enjoyed the little ride. It's going to be very expensive on the petrol, but
I did. It was, yeah, I'm overwhelmed. It was orgasmic. Like, thank you.
great stuff. Until next time, I'll see you on the next ride home.
Peace.